Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to Modern Magazines, and this time I'm going to be looking at Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer issue 4. Now, as I said, I wasn't picking up issue 3 because the acrylic minis of the characters that they'd handed out with the first issue weren't really interesting to me, and I couldn't justify paying £9 for a magazine with some minis which would go straight in the bin because I'm not interested in them at all. But this one had some gifts which I was interested in, so I thought I'd get it. But what I discovered was, as I started going to shops around my town, that nobody was stocking the magazine already. Now, while I'm used to partworks like this being more difficult to get as the issues go on, and dropping out of sight completely by around issue 8, I was very surprised that issue 4 was completely gone. I had to travel to a nearby town. Luckily, I was dropping my son off at his work, so I was about halfway there already. But I decided to take the trip over and pick it up. And I'm kind of glad I did. When I turned up in the shop, they were actually clearing it off the shelf to put out the next issue. So I picked up the two at the same time because I'd made the journey. But I won't be doing that again. I'm not going to be travelling all the way to get further issues, perhaps if they had got them. It's really not worth the time and the money. £9 is getting very rich for my blood for something which isn't great. But anyway, let's have a look at what we've got in part 4. So, this is Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer issue 4. Now, I'll get the plastic bag out of the way because it's very reflective. Now, as I said before, I didn't pick up issue 3 because the acrylic miniatures I really didn't think were worth it. But this time, we were getting two things once again. We got a rather large and quite nice D20. It's what, about 2, maybe 3 times the size of a standard one? Not absolutely massive, but that's a decent size. And we have a dice bag, which will contain the 1d20, or I'm imagining the smaller sets that they've sent you already. And this is very nice. This is very soft to the touch. The Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer logo on it. It's quite a nice little drawstring bag. I'm chuffed with that indeed. Now, for $8.99, it's not mentioning on the cover anymore, because we've lost the card. We've lost all the other booklets that they gave away before. We have those two things and the magazine, and that's it. For £9, it's pretty expensive. What's inside the magazine, though? Because I've justified it to myself that the dice and the bag and a simple adventure are going to be worth it. But what else we got? It's opening up, and we're going into casting times and spell range. Areas of effect. So going through magic. We've got character creation, going through species. We're on to dwarves this time. The dwarves of Faerun, the grey dwarves, gold for our ancestors. Then we're on to clerics, who are healers and warriors. They're divine agents, glory of the gods. They've got their holy symbols. Their features at first level. They've got their spell casting ability, going through the DC for spell save. The divine domain. So what spells they get, cantrips and spells. And Disciple of Life, healing spells cast by a cleric of life domain are more effective, because the cleric that they gave you before happens to be a Disciple of Life. Then we were detailing parts of the Forgotten Realms. So we've got the Sword Coast, part 1. It's varied climates, Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, Waterdeep, obviously going for some of the areas which are more famous. And Sword Coast part 2, talking about how it takes us from dangerous forests to the sunlit depths of Underdark. Not the Underdark, just Underdark. I find that slightly odd. We've got Wealth of Nations, the Lands of Adventure, the Sea of Swords, the Underdark itself. And then we're on to monsters, because this is going to be a feature of the adventure this week. It's going to be on vampires. So we're talking about vampires, the most famous vampire in Dungeons & Dragons, Strahd von Zarovich. Chained to the Grave, Lair of the Vampire, Vampire Spawn. And then we're talking about the Zentarim, which I find a bit odd. I would have thought there are more famous bad guys in the Forgotten Realms. But it's nice to get straight into them and leave some stuff for later on. Talking about their fractious factions, goals and ideals, meeting a Zentarim agent. And then we're on to the encounter, which is daylight robbery. Vampire Sworn of the infamous Arlor Morlon has been summoned to meet her undead master in the tunnels beneath Waterdeep. To attend the audience in time, her human servants must hurriedly transport her deathless body across the Sword Coast. Got the situation where to complete this encounter, the party must escort the trader's wagon to the high road and ensure it safely joins the caravan. If Eterine is awakened, the adventurers must save as many of their fellow travellers as possible. Beginning the encounter, going through the journey, entertaining Master Balabranta. There's Interim Ambush, Formina Bandits, journeying on, ending the encounter, what reward they get. Then we've got stat blocks for a commoner, a bandit, and for the vampire herself. Now, this isn't quite as good an adventure. It's interesting in that it's a travelling one, so it's about the journey rather than just dropping a dungeon down in front of people. But I don't find this as fascinating adventure at all. Probably less useful than the others. But I've got a nice little dice bag, and I've got a big D20 out of the deal, so I can't complain too loudly. Now, as I mentioned, I've got issue 5 because I picked it up at the same time, so I'll be covering that. But these are getting harder to get, so I probably won't be covering any more issues after that. And to tell the truth, unless the gifts were actually absolutely spectacular, £9 for what we're getting really isn't worth it anymore. So that was Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer issue 4. Now, as I said, while I was picking up that issue, travelling to another town, I did pick up issue 5. So I'll be back with a review of that one probably next week. But anyway, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching, as always. But most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.